Jake spent the next 3 hours moving through the station with his mirror. At every observation window, he used the reflected light from the twin stars to guide maintenance drones to more emergency systems. Each manual override he helped activate brought more cooling to different sections of the station. His human body was exhausted from the heat, but he kept working. Sweat soaked through his clothes and his throat was dry, but he could still function when other species could not. By the time the solar flares began to weaken, Jake had activated emergency cooling systems throughout 12 levels of the station. The temperature was finally dropping back to safe levels for most species. Jake returned to the safe room and collapsed on the floor next to his roommates. Zixtal's crystal body was clear and blue again, though thin scars showed where the heat cracks had been. Velnara's biolights were glowing steady green, and its water tank was cool and clean. Kethvor was sitting up, all of its eyes alert and moving normally. "Jake," Zixtal said, its voice ringing like beautiful bells instead of breaking glass. "We owe you our lives." Professor Hulrek approached carrying a datapad. "Mr. Collins, I have been reviewing what you accomplished. You activated 47 separate emergency cooling systems using only reflected light signals. The maintenance drones responded to your commands as if you were their chief engineer." Jake held up his mirror, which now seemed like the most important tool in the galaxy. On Earth, humans have used mirrors for thousands of years, not just to look at ourselves, but to communicate across long distances, to start fires, to direct sunlight for farming. We learned to use simple tools in many different ways. "We did not understand," Velnara said sadly. "On my world, we have biolights that can communicate with others of our species. We never needed to use external tools for signaling." Kethvor clicked its mouthparts thoughtfully. "My people evolved as a hive mind. We share thoughts directly with each other. The idea of using reflected light to communicate never occurred to us." "And my species can reshape matter with our thoughts," Zixtal added. "We change our environment instead of creating tools to work with it. We thought species that needed tools were primitive." Professor Hulrek sat down near them. "This has been a valuable lesson for all of us. I have been teaching xenobiology for over 100 years, and I thought I understood the strengths and weaknesses of different species." Jake looked around the room. Students from dozens of worlds were recovering from their heat sickness. Many of them were looking at him with expressions of respect and curiosity instead of amusement. "What we learned today," Jake said, "is that every species developed differently because they had different challenges. You all come from worlds with stable, controlled environments. Your evolution focused on other abilities. Humans come from a world where everything changes constantly. We had to learn to adapt and use tools because we could not control our environment." "Your planet sounds very difficult to live on," Zixtal said. "It is," Jake agreed. "Earth has ice ages and heat, waves, earthquakes and hurricanes, droughts and floods. Humans had to learn to survive in deserts and frozen wastelands and tropical forests. We learned to use fire and water and simple tools because we had to." Velnara's biolights pulsed with interest. "So what we thought was primitive was actually advanced adaptation to a challenging world. Every species is adapted to their home," Professor Hulrek said. "The crystalline people are perfectly suited to ice worlds. The aquatic species thrive in water environments. The hive species work together in ways no individual could match. And humans, as we learned today, are adapted to change and uncertainty." Over the following days, as the station returned to normal operations, Jake found that his relationship with his fellow students had completely changed. Instead of laughing at his primitive belongings, they were fascinated by simple human tools and techniques. Zixtal asked Jake to teach it about using reflected light for communication. "My people reshape crystals to send messages," it said, "but your light signals could work across species barriers. Any being with eyes could understand them." Velnara wanted to learn about human adaptation to different environments. "My world has the same climate everywhere," it said. "I cannot imagine living somewhere that changes constantly. How do humans handle so much uncertainty?" "We learn to be flexible," Jake explained. "We prepare for different situations. We create tools that can be used in many ways." Kethvor was amazed by human individual problem solving. When my hive encounters a problem, we think about it together until we find a group solution. But you solve the cooling crisis by yourself, using only your own ideas. This is a kind of intelligence we do not have. Jake became popular throughout the academy. Students from many worlds came to ask him about Earth and human survival techniques. He showed them how humans used simple tools like knives, ropes, and mirrors for dozens of different purposes. Professor Hulrich asked Jake to give a presentation to the entire school about human adaptability. Your species may be new to space travel, the professor said, but you have survival skills that many advanced civilizations have forgotten. During his presentation, Jake brought various simple tools from Earth. He showed how a knife could cut, dig signal, make fire, and even serve as a basic screwdriver. He demonstrated how ropes could be used for climbing, building, measuring, and creating simple machines. But when he held up his mirror, the entire auditorium fell silent. 3 weeks ago, you all laughed when you saw me use this mirror, Jake said. You thought it showed how primitive humans were, but this simple tool saved your lives. He angled the mirror to catch the auditorium lights and sent a beam of light across the room. Humans learned that the simplest tools are often the most useful. A mirror weighs almost nothing, breaks rarely, needs no power source, and can be used for communication, signaling, starting fires, and medical examinations. Jake looked out at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. Every species is good at different things. You should not judge others for being different from you. What looks primitive might actually be perfect for survival. The auditorium erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Crystalline beings rang like chimes, aquatic species bubbled, insect species clicked, and many others made their own sounds of respect. After the presentation, Jake's roommates met him outside the auditorium. We owe you an apology, Zixtal said. We judged your species without understanding your strengths. We have learned that primitive and simple are not the same thing, Velnara added. Simple can be elegant and effective. Your individual problem-solving abilities are not inferior to our hive mind, Kethvor said. They are just different. And sometimes different is exactly what is needed. Jake smiled at his friends. And I learned that advanced does not always mean better. Your abilities are amazing. Zixtal can reshape matter with thought. Velnara can communicate through biolight. Kethvor can process multiple problems simultaneously. We all have different strengths. As they walked back to their dormitory together, Jake felt the mirror in his pocket. The simple piece of polished metal that his sister had given him had become a symbol of human ingenuity and adaptability. But more than that, it had taught everyone at Kepler Station Academy that diversity was strength. That every species, no matter how primitive or advanced they seemed, had something valuable to contribute to the galaxy. Jake Collins from Earth had proven that humans belonged among the stars. Not because they were the most advanced species, but because they brought something unique and necessary, the ability to adapt, to survive, and to turn the simplest tools into instruments of salvation. The twin stars outside continued to burn brightly, but they no longer seemed threatening. Jake had learned to turn their dangerous light into a force for good, and in doing so, he had earned the respect of students from across the galaxy. The primitive human with his simple mirror had saved them all. Commander Jake Morrison was sitting in his captain's chair when the alarm went off. The sound filled the bridge of the UES horizon with its sharp beeping. Jake had been drinking his morning coffee and reading reports from Earth when the noise started. What is that? Jake asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Sam Parker. Sam was looking at his screen with a confused face. Sir, we are getting a distress signal, but it's strange. The frequency is very old. I have never seen anything like this before. Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to Sam's station. The signal was weak and full of static. It was coming from somewhere in the dark space ahead of them. Jake had been a ship captain for 10 years, but he had never heard a signal like this one. Can you clean it up? Jake asked. Sam worked on his controls for several minutes. Slowly, the static got quieter. Then they heard voices speaking in a language that sounded like music, mixed with clicking sounds. "That's not human," said Lieutenant Amy Collins from her position at the navigation station. "And it's not any of the common alien languages either." Jake nodded. The UES Horizon was on a routine patrol mission in this sector of space. They were supposed to check for pirates and make sure the trade routes were safe. Finding aliens in distress was not part of their normal job. "Where is the signal coming from?" Jake asked Amy. Amy checked her instruments. "About 2 million kilometers ahead of us. There's nothing on our star charts for that area. It's supposed to be empty space." Jake made his decision quickly. "Change course. Take us to the source of that signal and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we found something." The Horizon changed direction and moved toward the distress signal. As they got closer, their sensors began to pick up a ship. It was unlike any human vessel Jake had ever seen. The ship was long and thin, with a smooth silver surface that seemed to bend light around it. Strange blue lights flickered along its hull. "I'm reading 3 life forms on that ship," reported Dr. Kate Wilson from the science station. "Their life signs are weak. It looks like their ship is losing power." Jake studied the alien vessel on the main screen. Parts of it were dark, and he could see scorch marks on the hull. The ship was clearly in trouble. "Try to contact them," Jake ordered Sam. Sam worked on his communications panel. After a few minutes, the main screen filled with the image of 3 aliens. They looked similar to humans, but taller and thinner. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were large and silver. The one in the center spoke first. "I am Cadet Zixthon of the Zephyrian Naval Academy. Our ship has suffered major damage. We require immediate assistance." The alien's voice was proud, but Jake could hear fear underneath. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the UES Horizon. We received your distress call. What happened to your ship?" Zixthon looked uncomfortable talking to a human. "We were conducting a navigation training exercise when we encountered an unexpected gravitational anomaly. Our quantum navigation systems were damaged. Our life support is failing." Jake could see the other 2 aliens behind Zixthon. One was working frantically at a control panel, while the other was checking readings on various screens. Sparks were flying from damaged equipment in the background. "We can help you," Jake said. "May I ask what you were doing in this sector?" "We are cadets from the most advanced naval academy in the galaxy," Zixthon replied with obvious pride. "We were practicing advanced navigation techniques when our instruments failed. This region of space interferes with our equipment." The alien paused and looked directly at Jake. "However, I must inform you that human technology is far too primitive. To help us, we will wait for a proper rescue ship from our fleet." Jake raised an eyebrow. He had dealt with proud aliens before, but this cadet was being particularly rude. Still, 3 beings were in danger, and Jake would not let them die because of their pride. "How long can your life support last?" Jake asked. One of the other aliens, a female, spoke up. 6 hours at most, Zixthon. Our oxygen recyclers are failing." Zixthon looked angry that his companion had spoken. "Velnara, we do not need help from humans. Our technology is superior." "Superior technology that is broken," Jake said calmly. "Look, I don't care what you think about humans. 3 lives are at risk. Let us help you." The third alien, who had been working at the control panel, turned around. "Zixthon, another system just failed. Our navigation computers are completely offline. We are drifting toward an asteroid field." Jake looked at his own navigation display. Sure enough, the alien ship was slowly moving toward a dangerous field of space rocks. If they hit those asteroids, the damaged ship would be destroyed. "That settles it," Jake said. "We're coming alongside your ship. Prepare to be boarded." "Absolutely not," Zixthon protested. "We cannot allow primitive humans aboard a Zephyrian vessel." "Then you can die with your advanced technology," Jake replied. "Your choice." The bridge of the Horizon went quiet. Jake waited for the aliens to make their decision. He could see them talking among themselves in their musical language. Finally, Zixthon spoke again. "Very well. But understand that we are only accepting your help because we have no other option. Once our systems are repaired, we will not need your assistance." Jake nodded. "Understood. We'll be there in 20 minutes." As the horizon moved closer to the alien ship, Jake wondered what he was getting himself and his crew into. The Zephyrian. Cadets clearly thought humans were inferior beings. Jake had a feeling that this rescue mission was going to be more complicated than he had expected. But 3 lives were 3 lives, no matter what species they belonged to. And Jake Morrison had never abandoned anyone who needed help, even if they were too proud to ask for it properly. Jake Morrison and his team boarded the alien ship 30 minutes later. The inside of the Zephyrian vessel was impressive but clearly damaged. Smooth walls curved upward, and soft blue lights provided gentle illumination. However, many panels were dark, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air. Zixton met them at the airlock. Up close, the alien cadet was even taller than Jake had expected, standing nearly 7 feet high. His pale blue skin had an almost metallic shine, and his silver eyes held a cold expression. "Welcome aboard the Stellar Wing," Zixton said with obvious reluctance. "I am obligated to thank you for your assistance, though I must repeat that we could have handled this situation ourselves." Jake ignored the rude comment and looked around. What exactly happened here? The female alien, Velnara, stepped forward. She seemed more willing to cooperate than her leader. "We were practicing long-range navigation when we hit some kind of space disturbance. All our quantum sensors went offline at once. Then the gravitational mapping system failed." "And now?" Jake asked. The third alien, Kumint, spoke from his position at a control station. "Everything is broken. Our subspace beacons cannot penetrate the interference in this region. Our computer navigation system shows only error messages." Jake walked over to examine their equipment. The technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed. The control panels seemed to respond to touch and thought, with holographic displays floating in the air. But right now, most of those displays showed warning symbols in the alien language. "This is impressive technology," Jake admitted. "But if it's all computer-based, what happens when the computers fail?" Zixton looked at Jake as if he had asked a stupid question. "Our computers do not fail. Zephyrian technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. These are just temporary malfunctions caused by the unusual conditions in this sector. But they are failing right now," Jake pointed out. "What's your backup plan?" "Backup plan?" Velnara looked confused. "Our quantum navigation system has 17 layers of redundancy. There is no need for backup plans." Jake felt a growing sense of concern. "So you mean if your computers don't work, you can't navigate at all?" "That is impossible," Kumint said firmly. "Our navigation computers are connected to the Galactic Positioning Network. They receive constant updates from navigation satellites throughout civilized space." Amy Collins, who had come aboard with Jake, was studying the alien navigation display. "Commander," she said quietly, "I don't think they know how to navigate without their computers." Jake stared at the aliens in disbelief. "You mean none of you learned manual navigation? What about celestial navigation using stars?" The 3 Zephyrian cadets looked at each other with blank expressions. Zixton was the first to speak. "Manual navigation is a primitive concept that was abandoned thousands of years ago. Why would anyone need to navigate by stars when quantum computers can calculate positions instantly?" "Because your quantum computers are broken right now," Jake said slowly. The reality of their situation began to sink in. The most advanced naval cadets in the galaxy were completely helpless without their technology. They had never learned the basic skills that human navigators still considered essential. "Surely you have star charts," Amy suggested hopefully. "Star charts are stored in the navigation computer," Kumint replied, "along with all positional data and course calculations." Jake ran his hand through his hair. This was worse than he had thought. The aliens were not just stuck because of equipment failure. They were stuck because they had never learned how to function without that equipment. "Look," Jake said, "we need to get your ship moving. According to our sensors, you're drifting toward a massive asteroid field. If we don't change course soon, you'll be in serious danger." Zixton pulled up a holographic display that flickered and showed static. "Our sensors indicate the same thing. But without navigation computers, we cannot calculate a safe course out of this region." The gravitational interference is getting stronger, Belnara added. It's affecting more of our systems every hour. Jake looked out through the ship's viewing port. In the distance, he could see the asteroid field as a dark cluster against the stars. The alien ship was moving slowly but steadily toward it. At their current speed, they would reach the edge of the field in about 8 hours. What about using manual controls to steer the ship? Amy asked. Manual controls require navigation data, Cumint explained. Without knowing our exact position and the positions of the asteroids, manual steering would be suicide. Besides, Zixthon added proudly, Zephyrian pilots are trained to work with advanced computer assistance. Manual flying is beneath our capabilities. Jake was beginning to understand why these cadets were in so much trouble. Their entire civilization had become dependent on technology to the point where they could not function without it. They had gained incredible capabilities, but they had lost the basic skills that could save them in an emergency. Commander, Amy said quietly, pulling Jake aside. I think I know how to help them. How? Jake asked. The same way human sailors navigated Earth's oceans for thousands of years, Amy replied. Using the stars. Jake looked back at the alien, cadets who were still arguing among themselves about which computer system to try next. They had no idea that the solution to their problem was as old as navigation itself. Do you think it will work in space? Jake asked Amy. Space navigation is actually easier than ocean navigation in some ways, Amy explained. The stars don't move relative to each other, and there are no weather patterns to worry about. The principles are the same. Jake made his decision. All right, but first we need to convince them to try something they think is primitive. He walked back to the alien cadets. I have a proposal. Our ship has navigation equipment that isn't affected by the interference in this region. We can guide both ships out of danger. Your primitive human navigation systems? Zixthon asked doubtfully. They work, Jake said simply. And right now, working is better than advanced. The three aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Their pride was fighting against their growing fear as more systems continued to fail around them. We will consider your offer, Zixthon said finally. But only as a last resort. Jake nodded, but he was already planning his next move. These proud aliens were about to discover that sometimes the oldest methods were also the most reliable. 2 hours later, the situation aboard the Stellar Wing had gotten much worse. More systems were failing every few minutes, and the asteroid field was getting closer. The three Zephyrian cadets had tried everything they could think of, but their advanced computers remained completely useless. Jake watched as Cumint frantically worked at his control station, pressing buttons and speaking commands in his musical alien language. Nothing worked. The holographic displays continued to show error messages, and the quantum navigation system remained offline. This is impossible, Zixthon said for the 10th time. Zephyrian technology does not fail like this. Well, it's failing now, Jake replied. And we're running out of time. Velnara looked up from her own control panel. Commander Morrison, we have exhausted all possibilities. Our backup systems are not responding. Our emergency protocols have all failed. Jake nodded. Then it's time to try something different. He activated his communicator. Morrison to Horizon. Amy, please bring over the navigation kit from my quarters, and grab those star charts. Star charts? Zixthon asked. What are star charts? You'll see, Jake said. 20 minutes later, Amy Collins returned to the alien ship carrying a large, flat case and several rolled papers. The three Zephyrian cadets watched with curiosity as she set everything down on their main control table. Jake opened the case first. Inside were instruments that looked ancient compared to the alien technology surrounding them. There was a sextant, a compass, a ruler, and several other tools that the aliens did not recognize. What are these primitive devices? Cumint asked, leaning in for a closer look. Navigation instruments, Amy explained. They help determine position and direction, without using computers. Then Jake unrolled the papers. The aliens stared in complete shock. They were looking at actual paper star charts of the local sector, hand-drawn with incredible detail. The charts showed star positions, gravitational fields, asteroid locations, and safe travel routes. "What is this?" Velnara asked, touching the paper carefully as if it might break. "These are star charts," Jake said. "My grandfather made them when he was a merchant ship captain. He gave them to me when I graduated from the Space Academy." Zixthan looked horrified. "You navigate using paper? Actual physical paper?" "When necessary, yes," Jake replied. "These charts have been tested over decades of space travel. They're accurate and reliable." "But this is so primitive," Qmint protested. "How can paper be better than quantum computers?" Amy spread out the largest chart on the table. "Because paper doesn't break down when there's electromagnetic interference, and it doesn't need power to work." The alien cadets gathered around the chart, staring at it as if it were some kind of ancient artifact. To them, it probably was. Their civilization had moved beyond physical navigation aids thousands of years ago. "Look here," Jake pointed to a section of the chart. "This shows our current sector, and this area marked in red is the asteroid field you're drifting toward." Velnara studied the markings on the paper. Unlike her companions, she seemed fascinated, rather than disgusted. "How did your grandfather know where these asteroids would be?" "He observed them," Amy explained. "He used instruments like these to measure their positions and plot their movements over time." Jake picked up the sextant. "This device measures the angle between celestial objects and the horizon. By taking readings from multiple stars, we can determine our exact position." "Without computers?" Zixthan asked in disbelief. "Without computers," Jake confirmed. "Humans were navigating across Earth's oceans for thousands of years before we had any kind of electronic equipment. The same principles work in space." Qmint was examining the compass. "This device points to magnetic north. But we are in space. There is no magnetic north here." "You're right," Amy said. "That's why we modified it to point toward the galactic center instead. It gives us a reference direction that never changes." Jake began laying out the navigation tools. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to determine our exact position using these star charts and instruments. Then we're going to plot a safe course around the asteroid field." "This is ridiculous," Zixthan said. "How can primitive human methods succeed where advanced Zephyrian technology has failed?" "Because sometimes simple works better than complicated," Jake replied. "Your quantum computers are amazing when they work, but they're useless when they don't. These tools always work." Velnara was still studying the star charts. "Commander Morrison, may I ask you something?" "Sure. Do all human navigators learn these methods?" "Yes," Amy answered. "It's required training at the Space Academy. We learn computer navigation first, but we also learn manual methods as a backup. Even in your most advanced starships?" Velnara asked. Jake nodded. "Especially in our most advanced starships. The more technology you have, the more important it is to know what to do when it breaks." Qmint was beginning to look interested despite himself. "So you are saying that humans deliberately maintain primitive skills alongside advanced technology?" "We call them fundamental skills," Amy corrected. "They're not primitive. They're the foundation that all navigation is built on." Jake picked up the sextant and walked over to the ship's observation port. "Watch this. I'm going to take a reading on that bright star there." The aliens watched in fascination as Jake used the sextant to measure the angle between the star and their ship's reference line. He wrote down the numbers on a piece of paper. "Now I need 2 more readings from different stars," Jake explained, moving to take measurements from other positions. "How long does this process take?" Zixthan asked. "About 30 minutes for a full position fix," Amy replied. "Much slower than your quantum computers, but much more reliable in situations like this." Velnara was studying the star charts more carefully. "These markings show safe passages through the asteroid field." "Exactly," Jake said. "My grandfather mapped out several different routes. We can choose the best one based on our current position and the speed of your ship." For the first time since the crisis began, Qmint looked hopeful. "You really think this will work?" "I know it will work," Jake said confidently. "Humans have been using these methods successfully for centuries. The question is whether you're willing to trust them." The three alien cadets looked at each other. Their pride was still hurt by the idea of using such simple methods, but their fear was growing stronger as more systems failed around them. "Very well," Zixton said reluctantly. "Show us how this primitive navigation works." Jake smiled. "It's not primitive. It's timeless." Jake began teaching the alien cadets how to navigate using the stars. He started with the basics, showing them how to identify key star formations that remained constant in this sector of space. "See that group of bright stars over there?" Jake pointed through the observation port. "That's what we call the Navigator's Cross. It's visible from anywhere in this region, and it never changes position relative to other stars." Velnara was the most eager student. She pressed her face against the viewing port and studied the stars carefully. "How do you know which stars to use?" Amy joined them at the port. "We look for the brightest stars that form recognizable patterns. Stars that are far away don't appear to move, so they make good reference points." Kumant was watching over Amy's shoulder as she worked with the paper charts. "How do you mark our position on this paper?" "First, we take measurements," Amy explained. She picked up the sextant and showed Kumant how to hold it properly. "You look through this eyepiece and line up the star with the horizon reference." Kumant tried using the sextant himself. His long alien fingers were clumsy at first, but he quickly learned how to adjust the instrument. "The reading says 42 degrees and 15 minutes. "Good," Jake said, writing down the number. "Now we need readings from 2 more stars to hit an accurate position." While Kumant took more measurements, Jake showed Zixton how to use the star charts. Despite his earlier protests, the alien cadet was beginning to show interest in the process. "These lines on the paper represent what exactly?" Zixton asked. "Navigation lines," Jake explained. "Each line represents a bearing from a specific star. When we draw 3 lines from 3 different stars, they intersect at one point. That point is our exact location." Zixton watched as Jake drew the first line on the chart using a ruler. "This is very slow compared to our quantum computers." "Yes, but it works," Jake replied, "and it doesn't break down when you need it most." Amy was teaching Velnara how to calculate drift. "Your ship is moving, so we need to account for that. Movement in our calculations. We measure how far you've traveled since the last position fix." "How do we measure that without instruments?" Velnara asked. "We use time and estimated speed," Amy replied. "We know how fast your ship was moving when your engines failed. We multiply that speed by the time that has passed." Velnara worked through the calculation on paper, using basic mathematics instead of computer assistance. "So we have moved approximately 15,000 kilometers since our last known position." "Exactly," Amy said with approval. "You're learning fast." Meanwhile, Kumant had finished taking star readings. Jake showed him how to plot the navigation lines on the chart. The alien cadet was surprisingly good at the detailed work, his precise movements making clean, accurate lines on the paper. "Where do these lines meet?" Kumant asked, studying the chart. Jake pointed to the intersection point. "Right there. That's our current position." Zixton looked at the chart with growing amazement. "These simple measurements really show our exact location?" "Within a few hundred kilometers," Jake confirmed. "Good enough for safe navigation through the asteroid field." Now came the most important part, plotting a course to safety. Amy spread out a larger chart that showed the entire asteroid field and the safe passages through it. "Your grandfather really mapped all of this by hand?" Velnara asked, studying the detailed markings. "Over many years," Jake replied. "He was a merchant captain who traveled this route regularly. Every time he passed through, he added more detail to his charts." Amy pointed to their current position, then traced a path through the asteroids. "This passage here is the safest route. It's wide enough for both ships, and it avoids the densest part of the field." Kumant was studying the course carefully. "How long will it take to reach clear space?" Jake made some quick calculations. "About 6 hours at your ship's current speed. Well, within your life support capabilities." "But how do we stay on course? Without computer guidance?" Zixton asked. "The same way ships navigated Earth's oceans," Amy explained. "We take regular position fixes using the stars, Every hour we measure our position again and make course corrections if needed. Jake began, teaching them how to operate their ship's manual controls. The Zephyrian vessel had backup steering systems that could be operated without computer assistance, but the cadets had never learned how to use them. This control adjusts your thrust, Jake explained, pointing to a lever on their control panel. And this one changes your direction. Velnara practiced with the manual controls while Jake watched. Her movements were uncertain at first, but she quickly gained confidence. It responds much more slowly than our normal navigation system. That's good, Amy said. Slow and steady is safer when you're navigating by sight. Commit was working on plotting their next position fix. We take new star readings in 1 hour, correct? Correct, Jake confirmed, and we compare our actual position to where we plan to be. If we're off course, we adjust. Zixthon was studying the navigation instruments with new respect. These tools may be simple, but they require considerable skill to use properly. That's true, Jake agreed. Computer navigation is easier, but manual navigation teaches you to really understand what you're doing. Amy was showing Velnara how to identify course corrections. If we're too far to the left, we adjust our heading to the right. If we're too far ahead, we reduce speed slightly. What if we make a mistake? Velnara asked. That's why we take frequent position fixes, Jake explained. Small mistakes can be corrected easily. Big mistakes happen when you don't check your position often enough. As the lesson continued, Jake noticed a change in the alien cadets. Their initial contempt for human methods was being replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. They were beginning to understand that manual navigation was not primitive at all, but rather a sophisticated skill that required knowledge, practice, and careful attention to detail. I have a question, Kumint said. Why do humans still learn these methods when you have computer navigation? Jake thought for a moment before answering. Because understanding the fundamentals makes you a better navigator, even with computers, and because you never know when you might need them. Like now, Zixton added quietly. Like now, Jake agreed. The first hour of their journey was almost complete. Soon it would be time for their first position check using the star charts. The alien cadets were about to put their new knowledge to the test. Chancellor Vormek stood in his office looking out at the academy grounds. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, and he had run the academy for over 50 years. Nothing happened in his school without him knowing about it, which was why the current situation bothered him so much. Explain to me again how student performance has improved by 23% in just 2 weeks, he said to Dr. Zenthka, who sat across from his desk. Dr. Zenthka was a reptilian being from the Vega system. Her scales were dark green and her yellow eyes missed nothing in her chemistry classes. The improvement is focused on specific students, she said. They show increased energy, better focus, and faster problem-solving abilities. But when I ask them about changes in their routine, they claim nothing is different. And you believe they are lying? I believe they are protecting something, or someone. Chancellor Vormek activated a holographic display that showed student performance data. Red dots marked the students whose grades had improved dramatically. Have you noticed any pattern among these students? Dr. Zenthka studied the display. Most of them live in the same dormitory tower, and several students have reported seeing them carrying small wrapped packages. Food packages? That would be my assumption, but I cannot prove it. The students are very careful about when and where they consume whatever they are hiding. The Chancellor's 4 hands drummed on his desk. In all his years running the academy, he had never seen anything like this. The replicator systems were functioning perfectly according to all diagnostic tests, yet somehow students were finding better nutrition elsewhere. What does WISP-9 say about this? He asked. WISP-9 was the Academy's head nutritionist, a being made of organized gas, clouds who floated rather than walked. They appeared in the office as if summoned, their misty forms shimmering in the artificial light. The situation defies logical analysis, WISP-9 said in their whistling voice. Our replication systems provide perfect nutritional balance for all known species, yet these students are achieving superior health metrics through unknown means. Could they be taking supplements from their home worlds? Impossible. All incoming supplies are scanned and cataloged, No significant nutritional materials have entered the Academy in the past month. Chancellor Vormek was quiet for a moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk. Captain Raxfor, please report to my office. Captain Raxfor arrived within minutes. He was a large, muscular being from a high-gravity world, with thick gray skin and small black eyes. His job was to maintain order and security at the Academy, and he took that job very seriously. I want you to investigate unauthorized food distribution among the students, the Chancellor told him. Use whatever methods necessary, but find out what is happening. Meanwhile, Jake and Lisa were having problems of their own. Their operation had grown too big to hide easily. They were now making 50 protein bars every night to meet demand, and they needed help. Veltor had become their unofficial business manager, keeping track of orders and payments. Krektos helped with ingredient collection, using his natural ability to climb walls to reach high places in the Academy gardens. Namale used her tentacles to mix large batches of ingredients quickly. Zixara continued to serve as their lookout, changing his skin color to blend with walls and watch for security patrols. We need a better location, Lisa said as they worked in Jake's cramped room, and we need more storage space for ingredients. I know a place, said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Dr. Zenth Ka standing there, her yellow eyes reflecting the room's lights. Jake's heart stopped. They had been caught by a professor. Their operation was over and he would probably be expelled from the Academy. But Dr. Zenthka didn't sound angry. She sounded curious. May I try one of your protein bars? She asked politely. Jake looked at Lisa, who shrugged. They were already in trouble, so it couldn't get much worse. Jake handed the professor one of their bars. Dr. Zenthka examined it, carefully, sniffing it with her small nostrils. Then she took a bite. Her eyes widened immediately and her scales brightened to a healthier shade of green. Remarkable, she said. The bioavailability of these compounds is extraordinary. How did you achieve such efficient nutrient absorption? It's just real food, Jake said. We use local beetles and plants instead of replicated materials. Just real food, Dr. Zenthka repeated thoughtfully. You know, my species stopped preparing natural food 300 years ago when replication technology was developed. We considered it primitive and inefficient. Maybe primitive isn't always bad, Lisa suggested. Dr. Zenthka spent the next hour learning about their ingredient sources and preparation methods. She was particularly interested in Jake's fermentation techniques, which his grandmother had taught him using earth microorganisms that somehow worked with alien ingredients too. I can help you, she finally said. I have access to laboratory space where you can work safely, and I can teach you about the biochemistry of what you're doing so you can make even better nutrition bars. Why would you help us? Jake asked. Because, in 40 years of teaching, I have never seen students perform as well as the ones eating your food. You are revolutionizing nutritional science and you don't even realize it. Dr. Zenthka was true to her word. She led them to an unused laboratory in the basement of the science building. It had all the equipment they needed to expand their operations safely and efficiently. But their success also brought more attention. Captain Raxfor's security teams were conducting random room searches, looking for evidence of unauthorized food distribution. Students were getting nervous about carrying the protein bars openly. We need to be smarter about this, Lisa said during one of their late-night production sessions. Security is getting closer, and if they shut us down, half the Academy will go back to feeling tired and weak. Jake agreed, but he wasn't sure what they could do. Their operation was too big to hide completely, but too important to shut down. That's when Krektos had an idea. What if we don't hide? He suggested. What if we make this official? Official how? Jake asked. Academic research. Dr. Zenthka could sponsor us as a student research project. Captain Raxvor can't shut down legitimate scientific study. Dr. Zenthka smiled, showing her sharp teeth. That might actually work. I could register this as a cross-species nutrition research project. Jake and Lisa would be my research assistants, and the other students would be voluntary test subjects. It was a risky plan, but it might be their only chance to continue helping their fellow students while staying within Academy rules. The question was whether they could implement it before Captain Raxvor's investigation caught up with them.